Hey, welcome to the Scuttlebutt. I'm Rich Mellon, and today we have a guest, a trapper from the Catskills of New York. Yeah, New York, Mark Charpentier. Mark, it is a pleasure to have you here, sir.
Oh, well, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about trapping in New York. I understand that it's not all New York City, but all of us hicks and the sticks now when you say New York, there's only one New York, and that's Times Square and all them anti-fur hating PETA people.
Yeah, that's what most people think when they first think of New York. I'm only a couple hours from the city, and it's pretty amazing that how many different species of fur bearers we actually have, within that region, New York City. New York's biggest export is actually yogurt, and that's because of all the dairies. And there's a lot of agriculture in New York that people don't know about. So next time you're looking at your yogurt containers, look at the back. There's an awful good chance on the back it says from New York.
That's crazy. I had no idea. I thought your number one export was like lattes and bearded people who shouldn't be wearing hipster jeans. I don't know.
That's it. Yeah. Well, it's also people now. Everybody's leaving the state, so
I seen that. I saw that New York, Illinois, and California are all in the negative it's been for 2 or 3 years for California now that there's more people leaving than coming in, so that the population's actually dropping. It that's not a big sales, is it?
No, it's getting kind of tough for that kind of stuff, and it makes it tough running a business here, in this state, and a lot with the taxes and the regulations. So
So are you taxed heavily then in the rural area? I assume you're rural. I mean, you say you're a couple hours outside of New York, so you're in a rural area. Are you taxed at the same rate as New York City, or?
Well, New York City has its own taxes on the rest of the state and federal taxes, of course. So I'm sure for those people down there, it's even more. But it is. It can be a tough state to operate in, and but it's a lot of expenses that have to be passed on and figured into a business plan. So even with the animal control work, it it has quite the effect.
With all those dairies, then you must dairies must be some of your clients for ADC.
Actually, not in my area. Right here in the Catskills, you actually have to start pushing a little bit north and more western into the state before you start getting into all the big dairies. Our area here, like I said, I'm still a couple hours, and there's not too many dairies left. That the smaller dairies just couldn't survive.
Okay.
Our area is just a big influx of city people. And that's really how I make my living is, wildlife control. I run a full-time business here. I've done it for almost 20 years now. There was a couple older fellas that kind of, would do it on the side and had a business here when I kind of first started. But when I started this, it was pretty wide open. The big pest companies weren't involved in it. And, it was a really good time to get into it and to establish yourself. And, I'm very thankful and grateful now to be where I'm at, that I did start that many years ago.
Tell me what your country looks like. Is it rolly? Is it hilly? Or is it heavily treed? I take it that it's a bunch of rural acreages, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's pretty up. The terrain's broken up a lot. You come out through the Hudson Valley, which is a lot of my area that I'm in, and you have some of the, you just break out of the Hudson and you start into the edge of the Catskills. So yeah, broken terrain, lots and lots of orchards as you first break out through the Hudson Valley, apples and pears and wineries. And then as you move further into the Catskills, it starts to get a little bit rougher country. Everything's heavily wooded. Once you kind of get to me, things start getting a little bit sparser as you start moving further west into the state. Right behind me on our mountain that we live on the side on, you could go several miles before you would hit the next road. So, once you get into this area, we really start, opening up, and we got heavy deciduous forests and broken up with, some small fields, but, a lot of rocky streams, and, the altitude, the elevation isn't getting in too high, probably up into, maybe about 4,000 or so is about max, through this
okay.
area.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know the particulars, of what the peaks in that are, but we start getting some elevation, and considering you're only coming from 100, moving
Yeah.
up, the ocean's not that far away. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know nothing about New York City. Sandy and I ended up in it once. We were in Pennsylvania, Dallas, Pennsylvania, just south of Scranton, I believe it is. And some friends there. He had a doctor. He owned like 400 or 500 acres on this mountain. And we were there turkey hunting in the spring, and you couldn't turkey hunt on Sundays. So I was like, well, let's go to New York City. That's a whole story all in itself.
oh, I'll bet. I can't even, here I am 2 hours away, and I'm going to tell you, I haven't been down in there for quite a few years. Geez, I don't know, maybe an airport. Maybe I went down to an airport 4 or 5 years ago. Otherwise, I think probably 9/11 was the last time I was down in there, and I was still in the military then, so I spent a lot of time down in there through that time frame. But yeah, otherwise I don't venture down there.
You were in the military.
Yes, sir.
Which arm?
I was actually in the Marine Corps and the Army. Yeah.
Wow, one wasn't enough. You had to have two majors.
Yeah, a glutton for punishment. I was in the Marine Corps. Did almost 6 years in the United States Marine Corps, and then had gotten out and ended up in New York. And then right around the 9/11 time frame, it was time for me to go back in and go to work and do what I do. And so I did come back into the Army and spend a little time deployed over in the Middle East. And then I got out after that. And
can I ask what it was you did?
Well, over there I was actually a tanker in 19 kilo M1 tanks. When I was in the Marine Corps, I was with security forces, and was a tanker. And then when we went to Iraq, of course, there was no tanks, and you're on your feet and you just patrolled. That's what we did. And those are about the only years that that during deployment that I really didn't do any trapping. Otherwise, I've pretty much trapped every year, since, probably since I was about 12 years old.
Well, so thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you, Rich. I sure appreciate
it. You've done something that it seems to be so taken for granted, yet people don't understand the courage of what you did. When did you start trapping?
Like I said, I think I was probably about 12 years old or so. When I really got my start living in Wyoming. I did grow up out west. I actually was originally born in the UP of Michigan, all the way up in Manistee. And that's where a lot of my relatives and the French name, and you just bring it all together. And, a lot of history of trapping in my background that I actually learned about later on. But anyhow, we were out in Wyoming, and, it was something that kind of piqued my interest. I had an uncle who did a little bit, and that kind of piqued my interest. Grew up with a single mom, and didn't really have anybody else around for it. But there was just something about trapping that's drawn me in my whole life. And, I started out running around the trailer park on Sundays and climbing in dumpsters and pulling out the aluminum cans. And I would collect all these aluminum cans up, and you got to realize this was early 80s, about mid 80s, just before the crash. And I'd get in these dumpsters on Sunday mornings because all the oil field workers and the coal miners in that corner of Wyoming, they celebrated a lot on Friday and Saturdays. So those aluminum cans were all mine for the grabbing. So I would crush up those aluminum cans and bag them up. And I'd walk about a mile or so. And there was a place called Pacific Hide and Steel. I'll bet you there's a lot of older readers, listeners out there that probably remember that name, but they're about a mile away. So I'd walk over there with all my aluminum cans and I would sell them by the pound to Pacific Hide and Steel. And they also, besides buying fur back then, they also sold trapping supplies. So I was able to sell my aluminum crushed cans by the pound, buy trapping stuff right there. And that's kind of the early start. Me and my cousin would do a little bit together, and we just kind of learned on my own from that gift, from right then.
What were you trapping?
My trapping. And that's really how it begun out there in Wyoming. And then it continued when I moved to Nebraska. And, the Sandhills of Nebraska has really got my start. I kind of cut my teeth on coyotes out there. And ever since then, when other kids were playing sports, that's what I did in the winter. And, and it just never went away. I've always, trapping's always drew me in, and it grew into the ADC business that I have now. And I still continue to fur trap.
So let's split this up. Get your fur trapping in a couple of minutes here. Let's talk about the ADC, because it probably employs more trappers or puts more mortgage payments in the bank than fur trapping does for a lot of people anymore. What is, how many animals or there, what is the animal that you trap the most for ADC?
Probably squirrels, hand down. We have lots and lots of squirrels, and they're just damaging, and people just don't maintain their homes, especially these city folk. They just don't take care of their house the way that it needs to be. And usually maintenance issues lead into wildlife. So, squirrels are probably number one, probably followed closely behind that are probably woodchucks and raccoons. They're right there. But squirrels, hands down, number one. Birds, bats, I do, pretty much everything. I still do larger animals. I still do coyotes and beaver. I actually have our county beaver contract, so I do all the roads in our county for beaver. I've had that probably for about 10 years or so now. But it's those small guys that's what pays the bills, like you just said. That's what creates revenue. And when it comes to the bigger animals, many times I'm the one that's getting the calls or the referrals, even if it's from other animal control companies. Even big companies will, if somebody's having coyote issues, they usually throw my number up and say, you need to call this guy. And, because that's just something I kind of specialize and I've done my whole life. And I don't think a lot of the, other wildlife control guys have that kind of experience, into the, the canines and the beaver.
When you talk about what pays the bills and that, when muskrats are averaging $5, I get enough muskrats in my backyard. Literally, the quarter section that our house is on, and then a couple of quarters around us. So within a 2-mile radius of where I'm sitting right now, I take out anywhere between 500 and 1,000 rats. Well, if they're at $5 each, when I get 500 of them, my gas for the year is paid for when it comes to trapping and everything. It pays the bills, right? And this year, did you see what squirrels just did? Did you see what red squirrels hit a high of $4 at the last auction? Yeah. Do you have red squirrels there or gray?
We do have red squirrels.
Yeah.
I can't say doing ADC, my average is quite higher. But I can't believe that there was actually a market for a red squirrel pelt like that.
Well, and it's embarrassing for me because I've been giving them away to different organizations when they're teaching kids, trapping. They're teaching them trapping. They need something to skin, right? And I mean, whether it's a squirrel or a wolf, I mean, it's the same basic, right? So you could give a kid a squirrel, and I mean, you couldn't give them away for the last few years. And then, so all my squirrels, and I don't target squirrels because, but when you're marten trapping and that, you end up with a fair whack of them. So I've been giving them to these kids to learn how to skin and everything. And then and then and they come up $4. And not only that, but I learned that we have a special a section for northern Alberta and northern BC squirrels because they're so large. I had no idea we had large.
Oh wow. Who would have thought, right?
Yeah.
Here you are, you got coon and fox you can't even get rid of for $4. And you're selling red squirrel's got a market.
We don't have any coon here. And I did a show, like we're too far north for coon. I did a show with a fella in southern Saskatchewan last year. I think it was episode 7 on season 7 of Trapping Inc. And that's the first time I've ever touched a coon or anything else my whole life. They're a pretty cool animal. I was impressed.
Yeah, they're quite an animal. We have a pretty good population around here, especially with the low prices. They've come back quite a bit, but yeah, we have a pretty good healthy population of them, and we even have even a fisher population. We have, it really is amazing that the Catskills in New York have the wild. I think we have like 13 different fur bearer species that are trappable in our area. It's pretty incredible. Yeah. And are 2 hours from the city.
So when you're doing ADC, and I've talked with ADC trappers like that are in Toronto and Vancouver and all this kind of stuff, what's the rule? Are you allowed to kill them, or do you have to live trap them and move them, or can you move them very far? I know one place that they had to catch them alive, but they couldn't move them more than a kilometer, roughly half a mile. So it was like they were back that night. I said, that's quite the merry-go-round, isn't it?
Yeah, we do have, it's a pretty well regulated, business that we have here. New York State has a formal nuisance wildlife operators license and a test and, regulations that cover it. I probably am killing probably 90% of my stuff. And a big reason is I like to take the time with the customers and the clients. I really like to develop a personal relationship. And I have customers that I've had for years, and word of mouth is a really important part of my business. But I like to educate them. And when I start sharing the biological aspects, all right, of us moving animals around and trying to do numbers, which, a homeowner thinks he's okay. Well, what's the big deal? I can catch a groundhog and I can go release 1 or 2. Well, that's fine. But when I'm doing 50 a week, when am I supposed to release all these animals? And what happens is we start reaching, there's a point where biologically it's just not good. All right. You're spreading disease at 55 miles an hour. You're moving animals around at the speed of a vehicle and dumping them off. And you might have healthy populations in one area and some in another that aren't. And once I start speaking a little bit more about the biological end and the population and everything works, most people, believe it or not, even the city folk from the city start to understand and they see it. Explaining that a disease has become, so much easier now after COVID. I tell somebody about spreading disease, by moving an animal, and they got it. They got it.
That's salesman 101 right there, Mark. That's good stuff. Excuse me while I put my mask on and tell you about disease.
And people understand that, and they change it, and I try to I do a lot of body gripping, but I body grip more groundhog woodchucks than any other method. Do we have cages? Sure. We use regular cages, and I Comstock cages and that, but my go-to tool is still 155s and 160s for my groundhogs, and they're a very effective, humane tool. And once I explained it to people and they understand, most people are with it. Some may not be, and they're welcome to use some other company if they would like. I do some cage trapping when the situation, is really requires it for safety reasons. They got a bunch of kids running around loose. They got pets in the yard, things like that I need to take in consideration. Then I will adjust accordingly. But, and then New York requires us to euthanize all of our rabies vector species. So your raccoons and your skunks have to be euthanized by law. And I follow that rule very strictly. I know there's some companies out there that don't, and they'll tell a customer whatever they can just to get the job and make a buck. But, I follow the lines pretty straight when it comes to that. And it just makes biological sense to do it that way. And if I miss a few jobs, so be it. I think that on the end, my relationship with the customers, it plays out in the, the long run, and it's the best route to go for the wildlife population as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most people don't understand and until you talk to them and say, all habitat is pretty much taken. It's not like I can take this raccoon from here and take it 5 miles over there and there's no raccoons there. There's already raccoons there. And I mean, it's easier to explain when you're trying to move something like beaver, because every body water has beaver in it or has a beaver pond or whatever, and that habitat's already taken. And try, you explain to them that those beaver will fight to the death over protecting that body of water. They're protecting their home. People are actually a lot more intuitive or more accepting of what if you take the time to explain to them. But you've got to be in that situation. And I actually think that you guys in the ADC are in a unique situation when it comes to representing trapping, because you're doing it, you're removing a pest from them. And so, if it's Johnny New York City and he's already feeling guilty because, they all have this idea that the animals are here first and all that kind of stuff. But if you're removing this animal, it's a pest. And you explain to them, the way the world works. I think you have a much more ready-made audience for the good explanation of the biology and how it works.
Have you ever caught yourself yelling at the TV, telling the people that were hunting, fishing, or trapping they were doing it wrong? I know, we all do it. I do it. Well, here's your chance to come out on my trap line with Sandy and I and tell us what we're doing wrong. We are having a contest. We are giving away 3 days worth of trapping out on our trap line with us. All you have to do is get yourself to Grand Prairie, Alberta, and we will take it from there. We'll pick you up, we'll take you out to the trap line, and we will return your frozen carcass or your smiling face to the airport 3 days later. All you have to be is a member of trappinginc.locals.com. Be a supporting member. The draw is on September 1st. It's really, really simple. You go there to trappinginc.locals.com, and the very first post up on the news feed, it tells you how to enter and how to get in on this. We are easygoing. We are going to have a pile of fun. We are looking forward to having some new, fresh faces out on the trap line with us, and you're going to be a star or a guest of an episode of Trapping Inc. Season 8. Okay? Simple, folks. Don't miss out. This is a great trip. Number one thing that gets requested of us is, how can I send my husband trapping with you guys? I'm willing to pay money. Well, maybe I shouldn't be advertising to you. I should be advertising to your wives. Come to trappinginc.locals.com and become a member. Simple. Don't miss out. And now let's get back to today's show.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I really try to take advantage of that. It's my chance to be able to establish that relationship with people and be that one contact that maybe they're like, maybe PETA and the World Wildlife Fund weren't right. Maybe there's not something there. And this makes so much sense that their poor little sob video just doesn't. And I really try to take that and make a responsible exposure to these people, because it may be the first time they've ever been exposed to a trapper. And that's very, very important to me, that I'm able to offer that, educate them. And I'm also very active in our state organization. I'm the Region 3 director for this corner of the state. So, that's also part of my job, is to make sure that, we're representing trapping the best that we can. And, making sure that, we have that future. And that's how we do it, is by getting to people that wouldn't normally ever been exposed to it.
It's really neat, because you take a look at hunters, and most people are meat eaters. And so, they get on me about being a hunter. And I say, well, look, don't slag on me because I choose to kill my meal and you don't. You choose to have somebody else kill it. I mean, that's a pretty easy argument to make. Trapping has this whole other this whole other cloud hanging over it. And I think the fact that when you get in a situation like what you're in, where they need you, they need you to get rid of that squirrel in the attic or that raccoon in the attic, and that they're a lot more receptive to listening to what you got to say. Having said that, will bet you easily 80% of the viewers of our TV show don't trap. They're just fascinated with the life. They or grandpa did, or an uncle did, or they wanted always to get into it or whatever. But 80% of them don't trap. They just love watching, how it all works and that communication with animals. And I find that absolutely fascinating. The saddest thing that I hear, and I hear it all the time, back before the virus, when we could go to sportsman shows and do seminars, and that was people come up to you and say, I didn't know trapping was still legal.
Right. I hear it too. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you trap? How do you take care of the squirrels? Do you use traps on them? Do you snare? Are you allowed snares?
Actually, that is one tool in New York that we are not able to use. We're not allowed to use snares. I am licensed individually just for the use of cable restraints on beaver. So there is some special regulations that will allow me to use those. But outside of that, there's absolutely no snare or cable restraint use in New York.
Why would you use? Why would you use? I'm sorry. Why would you use a cable restraint on a beaver?
There's sometimes, especially if they're in areas where the beaver have been pressured and they're associating, maybe that body grip, got a piece of them, or maybe it slapped in their face and they're avoiding it. And, it's one of those tools that when I make an approach into a job, I'm kind of very systematic about it,
Right.
Usually I start out, I don't touch my lures or anything at first. Usually I'm in blind set channels and things like that. And then, if I need to start moving into caster mounds and stuff like that, I will. Then if I need the footholds, I'll bring them into play with sliders if I need to. And then if I still need to, I still have the cable restraints in my pocket. And then if I need to, I still have shooting them on with a light or something at night. But I progressively move through it to make sure that I always have an alternative tool to use in a particular situation. Just God forbid I end up with a beaver that just seems that he's voiding the, combinations of whether it's human scent in the trap or caster in the trap or, something like that he is avoiding. I want that tool there. And, a cable restraint can be a nice tool to use because it's practically invisible. And I can use it, just in a blind set, and then have that beaver there and I'm able to hold them alive, and then I'll be able to dispatch them at a later time too, where I wouldn't have that same ability on a job with a customer. And maybe I don't feel like a 330 or, a 280 is maybe the better choice for that situation for safety. And the cable restraint will allow me to do that and be invisible.
Okay. I'd never thought of it being like, I guess I've never been around that educated of a beaver, because by the time you get down to the footholds and the slider, I mean, that's like Dr. Death. That's the last one. The last one.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Yep. I completely agree with you. And, that's how we're doing most of them. But they do get exposed, and there is a few other trappers in the area that still get out and play around a little bit. So, and you always get somebody that's trying it new for a year or two, and, you'll get that guy that's missing a toe or two. But it's just another tool to be able to reach for.
The squirrels, then you use a box trap, a live cage. What do you use for them?
Yeah, most of my squirrels are all done with one-way cages. So I'm not a big excluder guy. I've followed up on too many other jobs from other companies that are using excluders, and there is times when that's a good way that it can be done depending on the house. But most of our homes that I'm working with, a lot of them you wouldn't believe are, wood sided and different options where if you exclude a squirrel outside of the building, which you stand a very good chance of causing more damage. And it's very important to me that I stop the damage as quickly as possible and not lock the squirrel outside to choose up more of the house.
Explain what an extruder is, or what an excluder is. There'll be people saying, well, what on earth's an excluder? Explain that one.
Oh, well, kind of two different forms. You can have a cone type where the squirrel just kind of goes out of a hole in like a funnel and may have difficulty finding its way back in. And then you can also have just a cage that would be like open-ended on the end with a spring-loaded door. So the squirrel pushes out, door slapped shut behind him. He's locked outside. Well, now if he really wants to get back in the house, he goes to work around the area where you put the cage. And if you have a lot of good wood or a nice home, you have to be very careful about, preventing that damage. And that's why I'm there. So that's where I find myself most of the time. I'm catching all my squirrels in cages with spring-loaded doors, multi-catch cages. And I even do, depending on the home, a lot of times, if I think it's the case, I will even prep them and I'll actually set them up at night. And I don't know if I'm supposed to be sharing all of this. There's a lot of years putting all this together to do it right and efficiently. But, I'll come back and set those up at night because I know the squirrel's inside. If it's not flying squirrels, which I have 3 different squirrels in my area to deal with: grays, reds, and flyers. But if it's not flyers, I can almost guarantee that at nighttime I got my red, my gray squirrels inside. So now I have a captive audience. So now what I'll do is it's actually easier for me to come back in, put that cage over the opening in the dark, make sure I have the captive audience, have the squirrel come out into the cage, making sure I have the offender that I wanted, and then be able to lock that house down in a quick and efficient manner without causing more damage. And, that's my goal. Is to be quick, efficient, and stop the damage.
When you are called for a squirrel, a squirrel case, I don't know what do you call them. Got to apprehend the squirrel. When you're called for a squirrel job, do you have are there multiple squirrels or is there a single squirrel? You must have some stories to tell on that.
It can be all over the chart. Normally with flying squirrels, you're dealing with colonies. I've been into those as many as 40 or 50 in a structure. Gray squirrels a lot of times are multi. Red squirrels seem to be very territorial. They don't seem to get along with each other the best or anybody else. They seem to just be awful ornery little guys. So we get it all over. I deal with from a single squirrel to a mom with a litter to, 50 flyers. So, once you come in to do that initial inspection, I really don't know what I'm getting into until I get there.
Well, I know what you mean about the colonies of flying squirrels, because I one time I actually gave up and I moved to Martin Trap. Because I was at 32 or 33 flying squirrels, and I'd caught a couple of martin, but they've ruined them. And I was checking every 2 days, and they'd ruined them because they would jump out, and even though it was hanging out off away from the tree and all that, a flying squirrel, that's no big deal for them to jump over there, right? They're the only ones. But what they do is they pluck all the fur off, and they take that fur back to line their nest, right? It's just they're just a terrible thing. But I gave up. Finally, I was like, and I moved the martin box, and I keep thinking about it every year when I set up. Because I had this little jog in my trail, and now I go straight across instead of going over to where all those flying squirrels were. And I keep thinking, I wonder if I should go back and set it up, because it was sure good for martin. I'll tell you that. The flying squirrels were something else.
Yeah.
I just read an article. It was the craziest thing. These people were studying red squirrels, And it was funny that you talked about that they're territorial and all that. They were studying red squirrels, and they see that red squirrels, their belief was is that red squirrels don't have a home, that they just keep moving and moving and moving, and that there are multiple squirrels that live in a cache. And I mean, for here, for me, yeah. I mean, every year when they get prime, I set up snares around my cabins because you squirrels in cabins, and don't need to tell you that. And it is nothing to get 15, 16 squirrels in a night. I mean, and snares are the only way to go. You have no idea how much fun you can have until you can snare squirrels.
Yeah, it could be monsters. They
Oh,
really are.
It was amazing. I gotta check, see if I can find any more research. The worst part is that so many of these decisions about trapping and about fur animals and all that, there is so little study been done on it. We have a quota on Fisher, and it is based on a 1969 study that was done in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now,
That
New York was very active on that. They actually just completed their study now, and they're starting to free up a little bit of the regulations again. Just based off data that they were able to get, and that they've accumulated over the past. I don't know. I've got to say they've been working on it for maybe at least 10 years or so, I think now, maybe. Don't quote me on that. I could be off a little bit, but they've been studying those pretty hard and having stations and collecting DNA samples. They've been making us turn in, the skulls from them. And it's been a little bit of a sore point from trappers. It's lasted longer than I think many think. Longer than it should have taken, especially with the fact that the fishers have prospered and really spread across the whole state. They've done really well. So I know there's a lot of frustration there, but these studies have led them into opening up some other parts of New York that weren't open in the past. And, hopefully we'll be able to get some longer seasons now in those areas that are open. And I'm very fortunate in the Catskills. I felt little effect. I did have to go and apply for the special permit every year if I wanted to trap fishers. But in our area of Catskills, we have a phenomenal fisher population, and we felt no other regs than besides the data gathering. So
okay.
I've been very fortunate with that.
How long is the season? When does it start, and what's your quota?
Our season actually starts. It opens up with the rest of the fur bearers, so it's normally around October 25th. That's when it's banned. Now Fisher closes earlier than other seasons, and the reason being is the DC biologists have told me that they believe that the Fisher are much more susceptible to being caught with bait, especially later in the season. So they do close this on December 10th. So about the time the fur gets really good, it's time to close the season. But that's something that the state association has been working on. And, maybe something with this data that's came out of the study and all the work the trappers did with turning in the skulls and that, hopefully it'll pay off. And maybe we'll be able to see us a little later season, in the coming near future.
Tell me, what's your weather like? Like when you're closing, and what's the month of December like? Do you have snow? Are you froze up? How cold are your temperatures?
We can get cold. I'm in the Catskills where we're at here. We're kind of right on the edge. Pretty much from my house, if you start going west, there'll be snow before there is back to the east. And I think that our location's still within a couple hours of the ocean, and that still helps to keep them, the winters from being too crazy. Last year was definitely one of the harder winters we've had in quite a few years. But we can get some pretty decent, snow amounts. We stay pretty wet here. I don't know what, I would compare it a lot to, some of the areas of the Midwest, Michigan and, Wisconsin, Minnesota, kind of those areas with maybe just slightly less, freezing temperatures.
Okay. Would you be like in above freezing during the day then, or in December?
Oh yeah, we can get that. Yep. Yep. We'll still get those. We'll still get those. And usually about mid-December is when we really start probably entering into our freeze. Usually I'm not ice fishing till after the Christmas. And then usually it'll last until that February thaw we get, which usually happens later in February. We'll start maybe getting some warm ups and some temperatures will start opening up and get some open water, for rat trapping and such. But
I find it interesting because we for our fisher, like December, about mid-December on it can get tough because that's when it gets really cold, and they don't move much when it gets cold. Like I'm talking about daytime highs at minus 20 Celsius or about four below zero Fahrenheit. That's our daytime high, and not many critters move at that. Well, still your wolves, coyotes, and your cats move. They always do, but like mink, fisher, martin, they slow down. They slow down pretty good. And that was just one of the things when they're shutting it down December 10th. It was why I asked about the temperature, because if your December's did get actually cold, you could, the season could run longer, and then it's not going to really affect the catch very much, if it was like around here, because that later in December gets pretty tough. How do you trap fisher there?
The methods are pretty similar to what you do. I know that remember me and you a couple of years back met in Michigan there, and we shared some stuff when I did a demo there at the NTA. Yeah. And our methods I think are awful similar. I don't get quite the snow they do in a lot of places, but I still lean really heavy on the poles. And the reason I do that is, one, I can keep them working. We don't get that snow depth necessarily, but once I go up that pole, it frees me up on my trap selection that I'm legally able to use. As far as non-targets and things like that, I like a dead animal, even when I'm fur trapping. I like dead animals. And, if I can dispatch them quickly and that like that, that's what I prefer. Once I go to the ground and I start using boxes, I have to be more selective about traps and the type of boxes and things that I use on the ground due to the regulations. So I find myself still leaning pretty hard on the poles. And honestly, I've heard a lot of counter arguments, about big males don't want to go up poles and things like that. And I'm going to be honest, over time, if a fisher wants to get in a trap, boy, he will get in a trap.
Oh yeah.
I've never seen that case. So, what I've been able to collect for myself and, over the years is that I really don't see no difference on the ground or on a pole. So that's kind of where I'm at.
When I use poles, I rather than just putting it vertically on a tree, it's because of when it gets cold at minus 20 stuff, they don't like to climb the tree, but they will still go up a pole kind of thing.
Hey folks, Rich here with some exciting news from trappinginc.com. We were listening when you said you wanted more clothing, and we heard you loud and clear. We've expanded our clothing line, more colors, men's, ladies, and children's sizes, more variety. Living off grid gives more time for the creative juices to flow. New humorous observations are added weekly, as well as our classic Trapping Inc. logo. We have joined forces with TeePublic. You can find our TeePublic storefront from the store page on trappinginc.com. Just go to www.trappinginc.com/shop and just scroll down to find the link for our Trapping Inc. storefront. Or you can go to tpublic.com and enter Trapping Inc. TV in the search bar at the top. Check it out. Big sales every month, and you can save up to 35%. Don't miss out. Get your favorite gear today. And now let's get back to today's show.
Explain to me the difference between, you were talking about your traps and that the pole allowed you some more freedom with the kind of traps as compared to being on the ground. Can you explain that?
Yeah. We really took some proactive approaches here quite a few years back to make sure that we weren't killing non-typicals and the possibility of pets, dogs. This was something that had come to the highlight quite a few years back, and we tried to get ahead of it. And I do believe that it paid off, and it made some people angry, by putting restrictions on these traps. But the idea that like I said, I may make some people angry, but the fact that if you feel comfortable throwing a bucket on the ground with a 220, a bunch of meat in the back, and you're not taking, other people and outdoor users consideration for, even if it's a rabbit dog or something like that, then I have trouble going along with that. And what happened is, through our work with NISTA and work with DC and the trappers as a whole, we were really able to save a lot of tools that New York's pretty liberal in their trapping regulations when you look at the whole across the country in the East. And we were able to save these tools by approaching it from a really common sense type of view, keeping 160s on the ground for trail sets and stuff if there isn't bait and lure. Okay, because bait and lure was a common thing. And you're not going to get a dog in a 160 that's tight on the ground if there's no bait and lure. He's going to go over the top of it. And you can kill all the you want. But so something like that. Let's remove the bait and lure and keep the 160s. Let's do this before somebody comes out and tells us what to do. Let's stay with small 5-inch body grips on the ground if there's baits and lure. If you're using a bigger trap, it needs to be inside of a box. If you're using a bigger trap, it needs to be on a pole, 5 foot off the ground. And by putting those kind of common sense things in there, I really do believe that we saved a lot of tools that we wouldn't even be able to use right now. So
I don't disagree with you. I get a lot of feedback for places like, we're mandated. We have to use the body grips, the killing traps, that kind of stuff. I can't foothold a fish or that kind of thing. And it doesn't bother me because I like my animals to be dead. I'm fine with them being dead. The problem that we have is that if we aren't proactive doing this stuff, when they come to take it, they're going to take it all.
Oh, I'm with you. I completely agree, Rich.
I just had a very irate person send me an email with a picture, and I don't know who would do this. This flies in the face of everything. It's like when people get caught jacklighting deer at night, right? And they talk about hunters were out poaching. No, criminals were out poaching. They weren't hunters. The jacklight. This person sent me a picture of a 330, and it's either a Duke or a Bridger, and they're not even legal in Canada to use for anything. But this 330 is sitting on the ground. It's got a wiener on the forks of the trigger, and like they were worried about their dog. Well, yeah, hell, I'd be worried about my dog too. I have two 80 pound plus short hair pointers and that, but I've killed 80 pound wolves that stuck their head in a 330 as well. You know what I mean? I would be worried too. Why do we have to legislate that kind of stuff? But that's just flat out stupidity. That is, and if we don't, take care of the best practices and that kind of stuff, we're going to get legislated. And you're absolutely right. You have to be proactive. I know what the world was before, but this ain't the world anymore.
No. And we gotta, we gotta save every little bit we can. And by preventing things from happening and using some common sense approach, maybe sometimes it does require a little bit of, sacrifice. And then on the other side of it, I can see the other side of it. I can come from being that, growing up, on the ranch in the Nebraska Sandhills and realizing that, well, a property owner also has rights. And
exactly.
Government can be overstepping what they're trying to tell somebody to do on their own property. So I see that too. And I try to walk that middle ground a little bit and look at it, from both sides. And, in New York, in our situation here with our population, our demographics and everything, it was a very good move. And there was a lot of people and angry. And I'm sure there's people that still don't talk to each other after those arguments. But, I think it saved us. And for me, be able to, grab a bunch of 160s and go set fisher sets on poles and baited sets is, pretty incredible, 2 hours from New York City that we were able to save all that.
Oh yeah. Hats off to you. And I totally agree with you. You though lead me to believe that you don't use boxes on poles. just the way you're talking, that if it's on the ground, it has to be in a box net. So am I reading that right?
You're absolutely right. I don't use boxes on poles. I try not to carry more than I have to. So I do use poles. Most of the time I'm in hemlocks or cedars. So I've already got my stabilizers and everything in place. I'll go out and, I'll prep ahead of time. And then it's a matter of just walking in, cabling my trap around the pole, putting it on the holder, cutting me snapping off a few limbs, laying them over the bait to keep the birds out, and then applying my baits and lures and rolling on to the next spot. Quick, efficient. My pliers are on my hip, a roll of wire, and I go. I have a good source of beaver meat just because of the nuisance work. So we collect that, throw it in buckets, and it goes in the freezer ahead of time.
And that's how it's amazing how much beaver meat you use to trap.
It goes quick on fish, especially. And you want to know what my biggest problem is here? And here we go back again to our weather not being as cold as yours. It's bears. If I get bears on my beaver meat and my poles, I'll usually give them once or twice just because I'm already there. But after that, I might as well just pull them, because once they get started, I will come in and that trap will be knocked off and the beaver meat will be gone every single check. So I might as well pick up my stuff and move it.
I had a grizzly go through, and grizzly are out later than the blacks. The blacks have to be traditionally or usually they're into their dens and that before the last leaves fall, because those leaves cover their scent. Grizzlies then spend that time until it's cold enough where they're going to den, hunting black bear in their dens. Pretty cool when you walk up and see where they hawked a black bear out of a den and ate them. I've seen once where wolves have done it. I've seen several times where grizzlies done it. We had a grizzly go through our trap line this year, a young bear, probably first winter on its own, because they stick with mom for 2 years. So I think probably first winter on its own. And he went up and got on on my Fisher line and Fisher Martin line. And he waltzed his way through there, and he actually ended up with a 160 on his paw, and he went down the road with it. But he had the box, and then he smashed the box flat. And I always have in my boxes, I always have a piece of wire mesh that I shove in there to pin the meat in there, right, so they can't fall out because they're all vertical around there. Anyway, he smashed it flat, and then packed the meat off me, because I use a big chunk of meat, and it was frozen to the screen, and eventually I found the screen shredded. And I'm just walking along, following him, and there was about 6 inches of fresh snow. It was kind of funny to wander along, and then and I was worried that he would head off the bush, because he still got my trap on his foot, right? He stopped though, and he pulled it off his foot, but before he headed off into the bush, and bent it up pretty good.
My God.
I don't have luck with that, with not having a box. Like around here, my Fisher and Martin and that. Well, for one thing, most Martin come down the tree into the box net. Like we have set enough trail cams and had enough success filming them that they actually come down the tree, and then everybody's worried about Mike Matney. He makes those non-grip floating colony traps for muskrats, and he's traps in Alaska, and he puts his boxes are just a foot off the ground on the trees and that, right? And because then they can just basically stick their nose up in it and be caught. But he's worried about them have to climb. Well, ours mostly come down the tree, and then they circle around, come back up. I always have the opening facing down so that they have to go up. If you have it facing up, I mean, it can fill full of snow, and they might sit on the edge of it and flop a tail in, and then you got a bad catch. And I don't need that. I don't need that karma on my soul. I've got enough staining it already. So but with Fisher and Wolverine especially, they will jump over that trap. They will jump over that trap so many times to take your bait and be gone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I really don't have that. I keep my bait very close to my trap. Like you would think that 160 is just about going to whack it.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
I really only need to be just 3 inches away from it because it's half the dimension of the trap.
Yeah, you're right.
So when the trap folds, it's not going to catch it, but that bait's right there close. And I don't really use really steep poles. I know I've heard others say, well, it's got to be, but I get those bows around and I keep that bait close to it. And if you got a tree at, a 45 to 60 degree angle, that, they'll stay on that top side of it. And I like a bigger tree. I like a 6 or 8 inch tree. That's just fine. I don't have any problem with that. I'll use them smaller if it's the only thing they got in the location, because I try to be quick and easy. A lot of times, some of mine are almost flat. And what I'll do is if I can find a log or something that's down, I'll actually throw it in the crotch of a tree and I'll extend it out past the tree, several feet so that it's a dead end. And then I put my bait right out on the end of the dead end. And then my trap will be right in front of that and then covered to keep the birds out. So they're actually coming up the main part of the tree or up the pole, and they're able to get on it, and then they walk out to no man's land that's just elevated and hanging out in the middle of nowhere. And there's just no way for them. They walk up to it and there's the bait and whammo.
Yeah.
I haven't had that avoidance.
I see exactly what you're talking about. And for me, it's always been that, it's leaned against the tree and it dead ends against the tree. But we were talking about snaring squirrels there a little bit earlier. You take and nail a pole up to two trees. I like a horizontal because that's a squirrel needs a different height, whether he's going up a pole or down a pole, needs a different height of snare. But if it's on a horizontal pole, they can be all the same, and you can hang a dozen of them on that same pole. But practically the best snare is if your pole sticks that far past one end, one tree or the other, a snare sitting out there about 3 inches from the end. That's about the best snare on the whole pole.
They can't help themselves but run out to the end and sit out there.
Yeah, it's exactly it. They sit out there. Yeah. So what animals on your fur line, what animals do you trap for?
I do like to trap fishers. I wouldn't say they're favorite. I really am a mink junkie. We have a decent mink population, nothing real crazy, but I fell in love with those little guys quite a few years back. And I'll still do a little bit of canine trapping and such, in the earlier part when the season first starts. But I love blind setting mink, and it's an addiction.
I don't get to do the blind setting on mink. I blind set otters all the time. Like, oh my God, I'm allowed a dozen otters a year. That's my quota. And I mean, I could fill that. I could go out and set 20 blind sets and have my dozen the next time I came around. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got them knocked. Everybody says, what's your favorite animal? I don't know what my favorite is, but probably my best is otter. But I read about you guys doing blind setting mink and bottom edge sets and all that. I know, and I don't get no open water. Our mink starts on the opens on the 1st of November. Everything's frozen by then. Wow. We're walking on ice at that point. I catch a fair number of them. I catch a lot of them that'll climb the tree, go into my my martin and fisher boxes. I catch a lot that way, and I like setting on the crossovers and that kind of stuff, beaver dams and that sort of thing. I got to ask you one thing though before we talk about your favorite mink set. Your mink there, do they have a lot of fat? Do you have to put them on a beam to flesh them?
I do. I have a small little board right on my bench, and I do scrape them off really quick. There's not a whole lot on them though. But we have again, I think it's probably going to go back to we got a great food source here, and hence again why we have so many available fur bearers, and there's just a lot for them to live on, and so they're pretty healthy. Yeah. Now I can't say that I've scraped mink from around the country because I just don't travel and scrape mink. I've scraped coyotes and cats and everything all over the West, but I've never done mink out West.
Well, it's funny because our mink are there's fat, there's the saddle, and there's fat under the saddle. It's like doing a mini otter, only one that stinks a lot more.
Yeah, I don't think I never thought of them much like that. They don't have any more than a rats or anything on them.
Really?
Probably. Yeah.
Because
Yep. And I mean,
I could take a
they're real
martin.
quick and easy.
Yeah, I mean, I can take a martin and there's a little gob of fat under each armpit, and there's a little bit at the at the skirt down at the bottom. That's it on a martin. On a mink, I got to put it on the beam and two-hander
Really
and peel it off. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ours ain't, I don't consider them too bad, but again, like I said, I don't have I really don't have anything else to compare them to.
Well, I ended up, this is a couple of different guys. So Ontario and back there have told me that, what do you mean you put your mink on a beam? That doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, I don't know how,
Yeah, I have
else
it's actually a little beam. It's, just a little bit bigger than, like a stretcher almost. And I've got it screwed right down on my bench, and it just makes it easy. And that's how I do it. I think there's some guys, I don't even know if they really even throw them on a beam. I think they kind of throw them on stretchers and clean them off a little bit. They want that satin on there, and you sure don't want to overflesh them either, so.
I have to take the saddle off because there's a 1/4 inch of fat underneath it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. We don't got that. Probably why you got so many otter too. You must have a plethora of food in that water.
Mostly, and it's like they did a study on mink here, and they said that 60% of their diet is muskrat.
Oh, wow.
And almost the total balance after that is snowshoe hare. And I cannot imagine, that's, everybody talks about how tough various animals are. I think the mink is the toughest going, because around here, he doesn't have web feet. He's got tiny little feet. He's got a big ass. And when he goes through the fluffy snow, I don't know if you ever get enough fluffy snow there to watch your mink tracks, but all of a sudden he's jumping like 8 inches apart, and he's going down and he's going up. Like, I mean, oh man, that's a tough gig. A marten or a weasel has bigger feet than a mink does. A marten stays right on top, and he's jumping a couple feet at a time, just going. Mink, lives in the water, doesn't even have web feet. Like, I mean, almost always looks like he's drowning as he's just trying to swim, let alone go tackle a muskrat or a fish or anything. Like, I'm just, to me, they are the toughest, most tenacious. Like, I mean, they get up every morning and pull up their pants and decide they're going to get the job done. I tell you.
Yeah, they do. And they work for it. They just constantly go at her. And
I've watched YouTube on videos on them, and they go down, and this mink was grabbing onto a trout that was bigger than it was, and he'd get a hold of the trout, and the trout would fight him, and the trout would get free and go down, and the mink would get breath of air and go back down. I'm thinking this thing's gonna die. Pretty soon the mink's eating the fish.
Yeah, I've watched them down. I've come up to check traps and watch them down there, trying to pull muskrats up from the bottom. That was just too heavy and he couldn't get it up. But boy, and she was a little one too, but you couldn't have told her any different. She was never getting that muskrat off the bottom.
Yeah. Well, they're cool. So how do you trap mink there? A bottom edge staff? Wait, tell us about it.
Well, I primarily, like I said, I'm almost strictly a blind setter. Not much bait or lure, and one of my main reasons is I don't want to deal with coon. And when I'm mink trapping, that's the traps I'm using. I prefer a bigger trap. I'm running number 2s, 1.5s, and I just don't want to deal with raccoons being in my traps. Now, don't get me wrong, fur prices are up a little bit, like we're back like in that 08 time frame there. I think it was 08, wasn't it? Last time we had some pretty decent prices. I don't know, maybe it was even
13.
Okay, yeah. And when we come to those time, then I don't mind it so much. But number 2 Victor square jaws aren't a raccoon trap, and I really love those for my mink trap. And I don't know if I even know how many of them I have now, but I love.
Shh! Don't let your wife hear that.
So we, and that's it. And I'm an edge, and I roll, and I try to get to mink after mink after mink. And I accomplish that by running the roads and trapping the roads, the bridges and the culverts. And here in New York, we're very fortunate that if it's not posted, it's public land and you're able to do it. you don't need anybody's permission to get in that culvert of that bridge. So I take advantage of that, and I try to get into the front of as many mink populations as I can. And, when I get out there and I start, I'm blind setting those edges, just, a quarter, half inch of water over a number 2. And I'm setting them quick with weights, and I'm rolling to the next spot. I don't want to be looking for a coon dragging my weight up on the bank, getting tangled up. They don't usually go far, but especially if I'm running at night, I don't want to be dealing with that. So, like I said, I'm blind. I usually run through my line first, and I'm claiming, my spots, and I'm getting them corners all set up, and I'm rolling to the next spot. Once I have my line established from there, then I'll start incorporating some other sets. Then you'll start seeing me, start putting in some blind trail sets with body grips. I almost always keep a body grip in my waders. I don't like to, I've got a 110 in there. It's wrapped up with some wire around it, and I just keep it in the front of my waders. And, it keeps you from being lazy. When you see something, you set it. And, that actually paid off one time. A funny little story for you. I had come down and checking a few, and I went around, and I had, checking my corners, and, I remember a rock, or a lot of times I'll just lean a rock up over it to keep a coon from going through one of those traps if I think they're around. And a mink will go underneath the rock against the wall, but the coon will go out and around it. And I put that, and the rock had fell down in there. So I remember fixing it. And as I was walking back, I looked over, and I was all done. I didn't have anything. And I seen where there was fresh mink tracks through the snow running up on the dry land. And I said, you know what? I should really put a trap in there. But I didn't have that 110 in my waders at that point. Why? I don't know. And I said, it was one of those points that you're 30 days in, and it's cold and it's snowy, and you have to give yourself that pep talk. Mark, don't be getting lazy. Get your ass back up to the truck. I got up there, and I said, let me grab a trap. I'm going to go back down. I'm going to throw a blind trail set into that, where that mink went right through the snow. So I did. I took the bits, went back down, and put that body grip in there, and turned around, and that rock had fell down again. So two things. It made me correct the set that I was making, that something I didn't have set in there right. So it made me go over and fix it proper. But when I did, I walked over there to fix that rock again. All of a sudden I heard meep, 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 meep behind me. And I turned around, and there was that mink in that body grip I had just set less than a minute before. So that right there gave me a lesson in myself. Don't be lazy, Mark. You see that sign, you set that sign, you keep setting, and you don't ever quit setting until you run out of season. Yeah. And, it was pretty neat. But so yeah, I'll set those trails up, and then as the weather does get worse, I will start looking for more bottom edge sets. So number one rule is the trap has to be working, or why set it? So if you can't keep your equipment working, that's where those bottom edge sets really start to come into play. Then you start doing that. So I'll set all levels. And if the sign's there, if I have the location, I'm going to set it.
Explain, you've talked about corners a couple times. What do you mean by corners?
Hey folks, Rich from Trapping Inc. TV here, and it's no secret that I'm a big fan of coffee. Our friends at Old Smokes smoke roast their coffee beans over wood fires. You have no idea how good coffee can taste until it's smoked coffee. Did you know that studies have shown that just the smell of fresh coffee can boost brain activity? Yeah, it's that good. Sandy and I have teamed up with Old Smokes Coffee to make our own Trapping Inc. coffee blend. Let me introduce you to Wolverine, an ultra dark roast coffee bean smoked over maple wood fires. This is the pure, uncut trapper's fuel that keeps us laughing and trapping all day long. If you'd like to try our special blend, you can find it at www.trappinginc.com/shop. If dark roast isn't your thing, Old Smokes has 5 different coffee roasts from light to extra dark, each roasted over a different wood for a unique flavor. Right now, you can order from their online store and use our promo code RICH, that's RICH, and get 10% off your entire order. Just go to www.oldsmokescoffee.com. That's OLE smokescoffee.com and use the promo code RICH. That is promo code RICH for 10% off your entire order. And now let's get back to today's show.
All my tight spots. So, when you look at when you're up there and you look down, and let me see how I can. This is one of the hardest things to describe, is when you look at that creek and you tell somebody that the mink's going to go over there, he's going to run over there, he's going to go under that stump and around the corner by that rock, and people kind of look at you like you got three heads. And I think over time you just start really getting a feel for where these guys are going to go. And so when I'm talking those corners, I'm talking when they're coming around the corner, either in or out of those culverts or in and out of those bridge abutments. And they're going to hug those corners really nice and tight. And that's where you need to be. And, that's where your blind sets pay off,
Yep.
Johnny Thorpe really, he was a big one to really throw in that, sharing that out there, about those blind sets. And, when you take what, he had done there, and I'll be far from one to say that I came up with all these ideas. I know what Mike did with bottom edges, and Johnny with this, and you name it. And, look at Don Powell down in Pennsylvania, the stuff that he shared that over time, and what a great little thing he had down there. And, I've learned a lot. I was able to attend a few of those and sharing that information, but I've taken all of that, brought it all together, and just put it into a system of working your butt off. Yeah. And if you do that, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, I don't claim to be the best trapper or anything like that, but I'll tell you what, by day 30, I'll bet you're having a hell of a time keeping up with me. And, and I try to make up for it on that end.
I always say that like this, people talk about, you're so lucky. And I says, well, one thing you'll learn about in life is that the hardworking, the hardest working trappers are the luckiest trappers.
You darn right. That's how you catch them in 30 seconds after setting the trap.
Yeah.
So, and I don't have great numbers here. The best I did 153 mink here in 45 days. And, those are pretty good numbers for our area out here. We don't have those Western numbers, and you like they do out in the Midwest, and you kind of have to work for them. And, I pushed pretty hard that year, and it was back, like you said, we had those little bit I actually bought a Toyota pickup that year with my fur check. Of course, it wasn't new, but I did awful good that year because the rats were good too.
Oh, that's good.
They were all, the rats and the coon paid for the check, and the mink were paid the bills.
Yeah. I sent a whole bunch of mink out for the last auction there. And I got mink in the top lot was 1050, 1250 was top lot. And I had a bunch of mink in there. Worst was I sent out 188 weasels. And I don't know, like 60 or 70 of them or whatever went into top lot, and they were $4 each. It was like holy cow!
Almost red squirrel prices.
What's that?
Almost red squirrel prices.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, red squirrel was better. I think red squirrel at 412 or 411 or something like that. Yeah, it was amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's. When you talk about those corners, I think I understood what you're saying, because I see it in the wintertime when the otters, especially the otters and the mink, come up a frozen creek. It's everywhere where those corners are. Well, they bounce off of one to the next rather than staying in the middle of that creek and going down. They go from one piece of structure basically on one side to the next piece of structure at the next on all those corners and edges, and that there'll be an undercut bank or whatever. And I mean, you can blind set I don't do it very often because I need to have, by law, the smallest trap I can use on an otter is a 220. And by the time you get into a 220, well, mink are running through those at 100 miles an hour. Mink, a 120 is perfect for mink. And so I don't do many of those blind sets because I got to get up to that 220 to be legal for otter, and I know dang well that I'm going to catch an otter, going to go through it. I don't want to have an otter in a 160 or 120 for an hour or two, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But that's so mink are your major, that's your favorite.
Yeah, they're my favorite. Coyotes are awful close. I think I like the mink trapping as a whole. I love the coyote as an animal. I love his mind. I love the family group. I love the history with him. And that's what I cut my teeth on out west. So I still do that. I lay off my mink. I do. I love the mink, and I'm not going to go out there and push hard for 10 or 12-hour days when we got $5 mink. It doesn't make no sense with $3 gas, and I just can't do it because as much as I love to trap, I still try to make the numbers work. So, we travel out, and I'm usually in Wyoming, November, December, and I'm doing coyote work there on ranches in Wyoming, and that's been working out pretty good. I'm getting the ranchers usually kicking a little bit to try helping out with expenses and such. And then if cats hang in there good, I can get some good high quality cats from northern Wyoming, northeast Wyoming. So that sure helped to make a difference there. So my mink, I've really laid off on, here, probably 7-8 years since I really chased the mink, ever since the price just kind of bailed out on us, after that last high price, just because you can't justify taking them.
Yeah. You are in a unique situation. I want to ask you some questions. Eastern coyote versus western coyote, same animal, different animal. What's your opinion?
I think very similar. Probably just the location is what's making it so much more different. Trapping out here in New York is, and the conditions and the snow and the rain, that's way different than me trapping high desert in Wyoming.
Okay.
And I think I'm prepared well for any conditions that I get out there, because I'm prepared for these conditions here. And I'm a big proprietor. I wax all my dirt and sand. I got a couple days every summer that's dedicated to just that, because I got to keep, again, number one rule, you got to keep your equipment working.
Yep.
If a trap's working, I don't care how good of a place or location or set it is. If it don't fire, it ain't no good. So that's the number one thing, is making sure that trap works. But that's the biggest difference I see from east to west. Coyote wise, it's very similar, but the terrain's different. I know these coyotes are circling. There's times when I'm calling or I'm working out here on coyotes, and I know I never get to see them circle because of the terrain and all the woods that I know that have already circled and scented me before I even got to, even were able to see them. And out in the west, I get to see that happen, because there he is 200 yards out. I don't see the coyote at 200 yards out here. But everything I'm getting, most of it seems to be very similar. Maybe the eastern coyote's a little bit more of a bully here where I'm at. I don't know if he's quite as shy of human scent, probably because he's around more people. I know I'm killing coyotes in Wyoming that have probably only smelled 1 or 2 people, probably the ranch hand or Will, the ranch owner. And odds are he's probably never smelled another human on that ranch in the year or 2 that he's been alive. So I think that they could be a little bit more sensitive to that there, where here they're a little more used to people. They're a very robust animal. Our coyotes are bigger here in the east.
How much bigger? How much bigger? Like here, I mean, an average coyote here, average female might get up to 28 pounds. An average female male would be 32 to 34. I out in the big bush, out on my registered trap line, I've get them up to 40 and 42, but I mean, they're half bloody brush wolf at that point. Like, I mean, they just have to physically be big to survive out there, right? And they're worthless. They're a $70 coyote all day long, because they're big, they're coarse and everything else. But that isn't usual either. Out there's a lot more of them that are at around that 30 or 32 pounds, that kind of stuff, right? What does an eastern coyote weigh?
Yeah, it's a lot of it would be it's similar, but they definitely run heavier here on average. We've had a big coyote hunt that would go on here for quite a few years now, and it's all based on weight. And if you're not going over 50 pounds, you're not winning it.
Wow.
And but that's a big area, that's a select big coyote out of that group to make the win. But yeah, you're seeing lots and lots of 40s come out of those contests. And, and I got to be careful with my dog here because of that. They seem to pack a little bit more. I don't know, maybe you see that in your area too with the harsher environment and that.
No.
I see our coyote family groups staying together a little bit better here and tighter than what they do out west. And I don't know if it's because they're preying on more deer, if that's advantageous for them. But, I really got to watch my dog. I can, out west, I don't, God forbid he runs into a mountain lion or something. But, I get concerned with him here getting out of sight in the woods and running into multiple coyotes. I mean, Levi can handle himself okay with one. But, if I get a couple of them and they're these bigger coyotes, big mature pair, he could be in trouble here, especially, spring and summertime when they're pretty aggressive.
So when you trap in Wyoming, is it the same rules? Are you dirt holing? Your foot holding, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Primarily footholds and snares.
Oh, you are snaring?
Oh yeah, I snare out in Wyoming. Yep. I run killer snares, cam locks with kill springs out in Wyoming. It's a phenomenal tool. Yeah. So I do a lot of that out there, and dirt holes, flat sets, T-bones, occasional blind sets here and there. But that's pretty much the backbone of my line there. This might seem weird. It seems like Western coyotes react more to dirt holes and hit them quicker. And then here in the East, it seems like the flat sets work a little bit better. Of course I catch coyotes with both in both locations,
That's interesting. I know that I sat in on one of your seminars at the National Trappers Association, the NTA. That was in Escanaba, Michigan, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was very, very good. And are you going to the NTA here in a couple of weeks?
Nope, I won't be able to make that. That's quite a haul for me out in Iowa. If I get to Iowa, I'm going to keep going. I feel like I'm halfway home. I've lived in New York a lot of years and worked here and did my stuff, but that sagebrush and those Nebraska sandhills are still my home, and that's never, ever going to change. And I still tell people that, I've been here over 20 years now. I'll be retiring from a state job here as well here this next spring. And I still tell people that I'm just here working.
Yeah.
But I made the best of it. I really have. I made the best of New York, and great people, and really, really, really a lot of great things about it as well. It's not all bad, but yeah. So
we were going to go again this year. To Iowa, it was only 35 hours, so that's not a big drive for us. But same as driving to Escanaba was.
That's it. You got a big long state. It's a province, but yeah, that's a long way across that.
Yeah, but they're not going to open the border, so we can't make it this year, which is a disappointment, because it's been a couple of years since we've been able to get together with anybody. There hasn't been even trappers meetings, nothing. I mean, all this shutdowns, it's been tough, and we've just had to do that like we're doing right here with you, with do the Zoom stuff, and in order to, because we kept waiting and waiting and waiting, because I really like to do this stuff in person, right? It's a little faster flow and everything in person, but and you got to do what you got to do. But we have talked for well over an hour and 20 minutes now, man.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Well,
I appreciate you taking the time. I've enjoyed talking with you once again. I can't wait till we can sit down and shoot the BS over a drink or something.
Maybe sometime we can get you and Sandy to fly out here to our New York State Convention. We have a heck of a great state convention here. And
is that the one in Herkimer or something?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. We'd love to come, man. Oh man, we'd love to come.
That would be.
I just find it so fascinating to go and visit with people everywhere. My biggest disappointment so far has been I haven't been able to go do the seal hunt, and it's it's got to do with the government. They won't allow us out on the ice, and we've tried to jump through all the hoops and all that, but well, maybe one day it'll happen. But it has been so enjoyable to go out and see how everybody else does something. That is so neat. I'd love to go out and travel around on your main line. That'd be cool.
Oh, that'd be great. We do a thing out here too. I've been doing it last year. We couldn't do it because of COVID either, but I started, it's been this will be our 6th year now, called the New York Elite Trapping Seminar. And it was something I started kind of as a fundraiser for New York State trappers, and also kind of as a bridge past getting your state license, the basic class, and creating a bridge of education and teaching so that trappers are able to go out and be successful, which I think is a big tool to keep them in it for the long haul. And it's been really good. We've had, let's see, the first I've had Mark Zager, Russ Carmen, Slim Peterson, Andy Weiser, Jeff Dunlap, and what I do is I bring these instructors in for a full weekend, and it gets a chance for these guys to spend on the line trapping instruction for 2 days with these guys. And, this year we're going to be able to get it back up. I got her back up running this year, and, and we're really looking forward to it after not having it last year. And we have some great instructors coming, and, that'd be something great to attend in the future. So,
you know what we learned though? We learned that we took a lot of stuff for granted.
Oh, yeah, right.
I was talking with Mel here last week when I did the podcast with him, and I realized that how much I missed seeing his ugly face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we've taken all of this stuff for granted for so long, and then all of a sudden when it's not there for 16 months, I guess, but two springs, so that's 2 years, right? Like, I mean, you can't go do it.
Yeah.
It really shows how much we were taking it all for granted, and we should appreciate it more.
It sounds like you guys are even on more lockdown up there than we are down here.
Actually, we're free in Alberta. We're free.
Oh, you are?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
the only thing that we can't cross the international border, that's controlled by our prime idiot out in Ottawa, and but we have, everything was gone on the 1st of July. We started to graduated March out of it in June, and masks and restrictions, all restrictions and everything were gone by the 1st of July. We're just,
that's where it was great going to Wyoming last year. Last year, me and my partner Wendy, me and her were out there, and it was just none of it. Nobody was doing it. They had enough. It was still I still got out in the morning. I put my pistol on my side in Wyoming, and I could stop at the diner and, grab a bite to eat or go in the store, and nobody looks at you sideways, and no masks. And, it was just, there was none of it. They just weren't doing it.
Yeah.
And after it's all said and done, it didn't make no difference.
None whatsoever.
And that was a nice break for me and her to be able to get out there.
Yeah.
And she traps right alongside me. She's great. And we just thank God we're, blessed that we could get out there and do that and just be away from all of it here in New York when they were completely locked down. So
I should talk with her. She could probably got some pretty good stories she'd tell on you.
Yeah, we won't do those ones live. So, all right. Well, I sure do. Thank you, Rich. I'm glad you contacted me about this, and yeah, it was good.
Do you have a website or anything you want to give a shout out for your ADC business?
Well, the ADC business, Catskill ADC. If anything on Facebook, people can find me there if they're interested in the trapping seminar for New York's, that there, they'd be able to find me, Mark Charpentier, or I have my group on there is the Complete Trapper.
Okay.
And I keep the details in that on there for the Elite Trapping Seminar if anybody's interested.
Can I be a member of the New York Association?
Absolutely.
Send me an email, bud.
We'll make it happen for sure.
I want to see everybody look at everybody's face when I tell them that I'm a member of the New York Trappers Association.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, there's an awful lot of good trappers out of New York.
Absolutely. No. I don't mean that. I just,
It's but people just don't, around the country. It's it's New York.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you. You have a good evening.
You too. And thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as we have. This could go on for hours and hours, but maybe we will see you all down the line.
All right, take care.